welcome to Ready for Anything 2021, our virtual edition of this event. And to kick us off, I'm going to go through and ask each of our panelists for a brief introduction. And I'll start by throwing to Hillary.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Hillary Moreno, Loyola, Maryland, class of 2014. I was a global studies major as well as a Spanish major, and I currently work as a mental health therapist with Catholic Charities Chicago, providing support to adolescents and adults around their mental health needs, typically depression, anxiety, adjustments, and I provide services in English and Spanish. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Hillary. And Valentina, could you jump in next?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, albeit virtually. My name is Valentina. I graduated in 2013 with a major in political science and double minors in writing and in French. I currently work as a research manager at Gerson Lehrman Group, where I connect our clients who range from investment management firms to nonprofits with subject matter experts to help them solve for complex strategic and operational challenges that they're facing. When I'm not working at GLG, I also sit on a volunteer board for a professional chapter of Net Impact NYC, which mobilizes New York City professionals and students to leverage their skills for social good. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Valentina. Greg, I'll go to you next.
Hey guys, I'm Greg Howard. I'm class of 2010. I was a writing major and somehow a business minor. I don't remember taking any business classes. It definitely didn't take anything away from it, but which is, I'm regretting these days. But I'm currently the director of CEO comms and a brand copywriter at Levi. So I'm the Levi CEO's speechwriter chiefly, and I also write commercials, ads, tags, everything for Levi's.
Wonderful, thank you, Greg. And finally, I'll go to Gina.
Hi guys, I'm Gina Malfa. I graduated in 2012 with a major in psychology, and technically I was one credit shy of a music minor, so I didn't fully achieve that. I have been working at NBC Universal for the past 8 years, leading strategic research for the cable portfolio. So I like to give the best example is anything short term to should we greenlight a show, if any of you watch Real Housewives of Salt Lake City or Below Deck, Galley Talk. My work helped get those shows on air. And then more long-term, there's a small network, Oxygen, that we rebranded to True Crime. So that's kind of the gamut that my work will span. So it's a very wide-ranging role.
Great, thanks, Gina. Still time on that credit for the music minor, I think, right?
I should reach out to somebody and get that settled.
Super. Well, thank you all for the introduction. And I also want to do a quick shout out to Dr. Peggy O'Neill from our Humanities division. She is a wonderful partner of ours. We're really excited to work with the Humanities division to put this event on. And I also want to acknowledge Eileen Hebler and Penelope Fleury from our career services team. And again, my colleague, Catherine Liu, who's going to jump in with our career exploration exercise at the end of our panel discussion tonight. So thank you all for joining us. So let's jump right in. It's been quite a tumultuous year. You have, I'm sure, thrived in your careers through some really interesting challenges. I want to start by going back a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit more about present day later on. And I'll kick off to Gina first. And as you think about your college career, I'm wondering if you can tell us when you started to seriously think about career paths and what actions you took at that time, anything you might do differently if you had to do it again. Just walk us back to your time at Loyola.
Yeah, 100%. So I actually came into Loyola as a bio major, quickly realized that I wasn't good at chemistry, so that wasn't going to go very well. And I switched over to psychology, always with the intent of being a therapist. And then probably my second semester of senior year, I went, well, wait a second, I'm not very good at compartmentalizing. I kind of take people's problems home with me, and I don't think this is a fit for me. And so I kind of panicked. And then had, started having conversations with my network, my family, friends, just anyone I could talk to be like, all right, well, what do you do? Is there anything that I like or that I find interesting that connects to the stuff that I did in psychology? That's when I realized I really loved research. And so that was an obvious career path for me, and just had conversations with anyone who was willing to talk to me to sort of do my due diligence, see what was out there. That's how I found out about this role in television research, which was kind of the perfect marriage of my passions and the things that I like to do. So if I could do that differently, I would have had those conversations early in college so that I wasn't doing it at the last minute and sort of after graduation as well. I would have saved myself the stress. I think it's useful to find out what really is out there, because I think it's hard to know. And a lot of brands have these little niche departments that you would never really think of that might be a perfect fit for what you studied.
Great example too of talking with anybody who's willing to talk to you, and finding it's interesting that you were a psychology major where research is a big component of it, but you eventually found a type of research that really spoke to you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great,
Totally.
Great example. Hillary, how about you? You want to jump in with a little bit of your path from your time in college?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had started off college undeclared, didn't know where I was going to be going. I'm the youngest in my family, so a lot of that, like a parent in the back of your head being like, hello, like, where are you going to work? What are you going to do with that? And I found with time, I just really had always enjoyed service work and being involved in community service abroad, in Baltimore too, and realized that global studies would be a good opportunity. It was broad enough. But more seriously was thinking about careers, I think towards the end of junior year, looking at internship opportunities, figuring out how I can get my foot in the door, how I was going to direct myself senior year. I did more administrative type work during internships between, sophomore and junior and senior year, which I think was an incredibly beneficial experience. And I'll probably say this again today, any experience is good experience. And so essentially I was trying to talk to people about what they were doing and realized that sometimes people's majors didn't always match their career, but it was about what you really opened yourself up to and what positions and you put yourself in. And so I would say, looking back, if there's anything I'd do differently, maybe tried to have like an internship while I was in class senior year, or junior year, challenge myself a little bit more in that aspect. But ultimately, I probably would have come to an event like this if it was available too.
Great. Yeah. So that idea of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit and stretching yourself, you
Exactly.
realize after the fact, maybe you had more capacity than you realized.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and you mentioned something else, Hillary, that leads us into this next question about how people's majors don't always connect with their career paths. And in actuality, most people's majors actually don't translate directly to their career path, which is just really interesting. And the humanities in general do provide us with a lot of incredible core knowledge and skills that I think we don't always see at the time how they're going to relate to our path down the road. So I'd love to go to Valentina next and ask you, what's an example of a humanities class or a professor that's provided a lesson that stuck with you through today?
Yeah, this is a really tough question. It's hard to pinpoint one specific course because I feel like I learned so much from like every single class I took, including the ones that I was taking because they fulfilled the core. But I guess if I had to say the biggest takeaway, I would say something that has served me well even to this day is just understanding the profound impact that words have. So whether it was like learning the ins and outs of rhetoric with Professor Breezy or delineating like sort of what separates a statesman like Lincoln from a tyrant like Stalin. In Professor Schwab's class, I was just constantly reflecting on how we have the ability to sway an audience and how communicating effectively is not a one size fits all approach. I think reflecting on the society that we live in today, we're seeing that now more than ever. So this lesson was just really invaluable to me as I navigated my early years post Loyola, and still to this day, I'm a perpetual student and always learning how to communicate more effectively.
Super. Thank you. Hillary, or I'm sorry, Greg, I'll go to you next. What's an example from your experience at Loyola, something that's stuck with you from that humanities core through today?
I had a few things. I mean, I became a journalist, and I was taking general writing courses, all different types of writing, and I took a contemporary essay class with Dr. Ron Tanner, who is gone now, and he taught me some things that I still think about a lot today about, write until you're finished, it's kind of, imply that there's value in what I have to say. And, I think a lot of kids, and, they have to sort of be told that, right? They have to learn that. And, I think that like Dr. Tanner, Dr. O'Neill here, more than anything else, they thought that I was a pretty good writer, and that was something I more important than anything else, probably I got from Loyola, because I think it's when you're starting out in your career, you don't see much success. You don't see, there are people around you who might be moving faster than you, who, you might have friends who might be, making more money than you or something like that. You go into a newsroom and people are 5 or 10 or 20 years older than you, and they're just much better than you. And, I had, they're tough days, they're tough nights. Am I choosing the right career? Can I do this? And it always got me back to, I wanted to be a magazine writer. I learned that at Loyola, and I had a couple of professors who said, you can do it, and it's something I always fell back on more than any other lesson. And even in journalism, everyone I've seen who's hung in there and worked hard, they got a shot to be the writer they wanted to be, but you have to kind of hang in there when there's evidence that maybe you've made the wrong decision or something like that.
I love the example that both Valentina and Greg, that both of you focused on writing as a core of your answer of what has stuck with you. And Greg, you applied that to a very traditional, a writing focused career. Valentina, you're in investment management. I think it's really neat that that same skill set was referenced in these two different, really diverse paths, which is one of the really important lessons of tonight's event. As we think a little bit more towards your career thus far today, and it could be a skill like writing, it could be thinking about other skills that we develop through the core experience at Loyola around collaborating with others, problem solving through evidence, being a champion of inclusion. Some of we've already talked about service, engaging as a good citizen as part of that experience. I'm curious about then a highlight of your career so far that exemplifies one of those lessons in action. So Valentina, I'll go back to you. Could be writing, maybe you take it in another direction, but what's an example today of something from your career so far where you've applied these lessons?
Yeah, so I will do you one better and try to encapsulate all of those things.
All right, let's do it.
Example. So prior to working at my current job at GLG, I was in a learning development role at a philanthropic foundation. So it was actually, or is actually the largest human rights defender in the world, working across 140 countries. And I was fairly new, and I was responsible for basically reworking this guide for new grant makers to help them when they just started to think a little bit about how the foundation approaches good grant making, both in spirit and in practice. So mind you, these grant makers were coming from all different backgrounds, all different countries. This guide was one of the first resources that they were getting. And, it was challenging to try to put together an adult learning resource that's comprehensive, cohesive, and above all, engaging. So as I'm sure many of you know, you can put together the most exhaustive collection of documents and how-tos, but if they just collect dust on your desk, then they're probably not practical. So I worked closely with my team. We developed a focus group to kind of get feedback on what was missing, decided what we needed to do was think a little bit more creatively about how we would relay some of the information that was kind of dense Some of the things we ended up changing were we incorporated a timeline for the history of the foundation, whereas before it was just a bunch of paragraphs. We incorporated infographics with a lot of diagrams of workflow processes instead of, once again, just lots of words. Fun facts and trivia sprinkled throughout to kind of get people to test their knowledge. And also, and I think this lends itself to inclusivity and just, being aware of your audience. It was very important to me that we incorporate a glossary of just OSF, jargon. So a lot of the terms in the foundation, it was almost like they were speaking another language, right? And so if you didn't have the benefit of speaking English as your first language, or you weren't in one of the US-based offices, you were a bit at a disadvantage. So through this, we developed this new guide. We worked with a graphic designer. We had them printed out. And I think the biggest success to it was that several months later, when they started rolling them out at orientation, I got a call from a new grant maker in Jordan. And he was so excited to talk about how we approach grant making. And he actually referenced using the guide. So I think that sounds so minute, but it was a testament to a lot of the work that goes into making content accessible and engaging and inclusive. So
great. It touches on so much of that skill set of knowing your audience, of delivering a product. It sounds like it was a pretty innovative subject matter too, that people were learning from the best practices from you all. So yeah, there's a lot there that had to go into this one project. Super example. Hillary, how about you? I'm curious what comes to mind as you think of how some of these lessons have passed on to present day in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So something I got to do through work actually right after the start of the pandemic was lead a women's trauma-informed yoga group therapy. And it was on one of our new mental health centers on the west side of Chicago. We had just gotten this grant, or not a grant, I should say, that this big legislative move was made in the community where property taxes went up 14 cents. And it was to cover this mental health center to provide free mental health services for the community, 3 different zip codes on the west side. And really exciting project, opened up right when the pandemic started. And we're like, okay, we have to keep going. And we wanted to really create more engagement in the community. And outside of work, I'm a yoga instructor. It's something I love, but I also think it's a very exclusive community, the way that we've Easternized the tradition. And so, or I should say Westernized the tradition, that's Eastern. And so I wanted to bring it into the organization as a way to help people manage their stress, not only around the pandemic, but maybe their own traumatic experiences, and make it accessible to individuals, no matter their socioeconomic status, color, shape, size, whatever, that it's open for everyone. And it created a really beautiful community at this center, more accessibility, which is something that I'm a big proponent for. And I just love getting to reach more and more people on a personal level, and helping them find ways to manage their mental health. And it was virtual. So that was an exciting adjustment to make too. Beautiful to see how people can connect on such a level virtually.
Yeah, that's super. What a great example of sometimes when we talk to students about your path, we'll talk about the difference between a vocation and what's called an avocation, where your vocation is the primary purpose, oftentimes the central focus of your career, and an avocation is more of something that you do on the side. It's more of a secondary thing, but that's very important to you. And what a great example of how you were able to weave those two things together by bringing the yoga practice in to your everyday work. Really, really neat way to show the creativity there. I'm curious too, if anybody else has thoughts. This past year, work has changed so much. We've had to be so adaptable. For our students, the experience has changed so much. Of navigating college, and for those of you who are admitted students, navigating your senior year of high school. But I'm curious from any of our other panelists, if any examples come to mind for you of ways that you've been able to apply some of those lessons from your time at Loyola to be nimble and adapt and roll with the challenges of this past year.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has grand plans for themselves and for their careers and stuff, and I guess their lives, you know, like even bigger and more important than your career. You have grand plans for like who you want to be and where you're going to be, and that, you know, doesn't always have to matter a whole lot, you know, and um, you know, you kind of have to, you almost have to apply some humility and take a step back, and you know, and uh, I don't know, it's almost, instead of being nimble, for me, it was kind of like calming down and relaxing in the moment, you know, um, and kind of counting sort of the small victories, you know. I think that I started off counting the days on my fridge, you know, and that was, you know, I was just counting what I didn't have, right, in my life, and freedom and stuff, and I was waiting to see, you know, if I can't be too long now before I'm allowed to go outside, right? And I don't know. I think you've kind of had to surrender to what's going on, and kind of work within this framework, and that's helped me, you know, at work every day. You know, it's helped me in my personal relationships and how remold my personal relationships, you know, that I care about. You know, I'm like, what can I do? I've never really learned how to cook. I'm learning how to cook now. You know, like there's just things like that that I think you can only do by sort of stepping back and taking it and slowing down and taking a deep breath, and you know, seeing where you can thrive and better yourself, and better the people around you. So,
Yeah, it's being able to look at, you know, there's a certain framework to your life, right? There's the structure of everything that your daily routine, your weekly routine looks like, and then I think it's really good advice to just surrender a little bit to, now there's a pretty new framework here, and that's easier said than done. I think we all went through an experience that you know, took days and weeks, and I think in some cases felt like years, as we were trying to adjust to this new way of life. But to know that it's a different framework now, so I have to adapt to that, and come up with a path forward, I think is a really good way to look at it. Greg, I want to stick with you because I know that there's a lot of career-related pressure on college students, where it forces some to think, well, I need to pursue a major that's directly connected to a specific career. It's a pre-professional kind of a track. What do you say to that from your own experience, in terms of what you studied and now what you do in your career?
yeah, I mean, I think that just about all external pressure is fake and arbitrary. You know, I'm like career pressure, right? Pressure, let's say to have kids, right? To date, like, you know, like pressure. This is like where you should be living. All these things, like they kind of change. I've lived throughout the country and all over the world, and you know, I live in New York now. I don't have a single friend who has a kid, you know, and but where I'm from in Maryland, the people who, you know, they all went to school and have great careers and stuff, and they all have kids. And it's just like, that's just what the expectations are around you. I think that the best thing for me that I've done, I left Loyola wanting to be a magazine writer. I went to grad school for magazine writing, and I put personal pressure on myself. I think that a lot of humanities majors and careers are in some ways personal pursuits. You know, I know it was for me, and I think that you owe it to yourself to be tenacious in pursuing your career and pursuing, you know, perfecting your craft, right? What you decide to do, but like what that is doesn't actually matter at all. And you know, I'm on my second career now. I'm selling jeans. Didn't know, you know, that was going to happen. I can bet that this won't be my last career. You know, I was so afraid to quit working. I made it to the New York Times. I was writing for, you know, the greatest newspaper in the world, the biggest newspaper in the world, and I was so afraid of what everyone was going to say if I quit. But I was miserable. I was burnt out, and I quit. And I realized that no one cared. Like not a single person that actually cared about me, like cared at all about where I was getting my paycheck or if I had a byline or anything like that. They just cared if I was happy and doing what I wanted to do. And so I think I have to be tenacious once you make a decision and seeing it through and giving yourself a real shot. But what that shot is, whether it's connected to your major or not, does not matter in the least. I'm selling jeans. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, no, it's but if I heard you right, part of this is the external pressure is one thing, but you talked about like having your own dream and pursuing it tenaciously. And I think when I heard you say, I put pressure on myself, I actually read that more along the lines of you kind of you realize you owed it to yourself to put in that work to make that dream happen. It's a little different way of looking at pressure, right? Yeah.
You do. You owe it to your friends to be a good friend, right? And to your family to be a good family member. You have to give your all in these things, and you have to give yourself, in your dreams, your all too. But if they change, that's okay. And even if you don't make it, that's okay. You gotta, but you can't be any what ifs. You be like, I did this. This is what happened. And if you take a turn or decide to do something else, no one cares. No one's looking at you except you and a couple people that are like blood related to you. No one else actually cares what you're doing. And like when I realized that, I was 30 when I realized that, and it was the most freeing feeling in the world. I flew to Australia. I just left the country.
Yeah. Really good perspective. Yeah, thank you. Gina, I want to go to you. You introduced yourself earlier, the psychology major, now in TV research. So I'd be curious about your perspective on this question.
Yeah, actually, so I actually think the psych major ties really well to what I do. It's like, ultimately, I have to understand who's watching TV, who's my audience, what are their behaviors. I think it actually ties really nicely in a way that probably was unexpected. But I think to just focus on your major and assume that number one, to Greg's point, is going to be what you're interested in forever is very short-sighted. And it doesn't mean that like you're pigeonholing yourself. I think study what excites you. That's how I wound up in psychology, and you'll make it work. From a hiring perspective, I've never not given someone an interview because of their major. I just, my expectation is that you're going to explain to me how what you've learned and what ties to the role that I'm hiring for. And I think, one of my best friends from high school was very adamant that I mentioned this. She was a philosophy major, not at Loyola, but she was a philosophy major, and now she's leading pricing and inventory for a digital ad agency. Like the two could not be more disconnected. And she's like leading that department. So study what excites you. You'll be able to tie it, to whatever you end up pursuing. And you're going to grow as a human. The thing that makes you excited today might not be the thing that excites you when you're 30 or 40. So you'll figure it out.
That's awesome. So, part of that then is, you study the things that really excite you. Then there's amazing opportunities for internships, experiential learning along the way. And that can sometimes fill in the blanks and help you think about, how am I going to apply some of these transferable skills that I'm learning through this major to whatever it is that I'm interested in for my life after college. Greg, in terms of internships, experiential learning during college around your career path, what did you do, and what's your advice for today's students on how to approach it?
I've had a few internships in my life. I was at Style magazine in Baltimore as a senior, and I said, all right, I'm going to do this. I think at that point I'd been accepted to NYU for grad school in magazine writing. But Style magazine was a small place. I think there were like 6 or 7 people working it, and so I had to write a lot, and I really enjoyed it. And I didn't have to get anyone coffee or anything like that. I wasn't a personal assistant, it didn't feel like it was a privilege for me to be there. I was a low paid, they're paying me in school credit employee, and I was learning how to do the thing I wanted to do. And you know, I'm lucky in some sense that, you know, I've never wanted to be an editor. I've never wanted to actually even be anyone's boss. I just wanted to write. And so, you know, all my internships I've taken since then, I took 2 in grad school, and then and then even I had a fellowship out of grad school, which was my first job, and that was in Dallas, Texas, because I wanted to be a magazine writer. They were the only people I could find who would let me write long magazine type stories. And you know, I could have worked at a bigger magazine as an editorial assistant, right? I could have worked at different places in different roles that were where I'm getting people coffee and things like that. And I think that you're not just there to be the help. You're there because it's going to help your career. It's going to help you get better. So I would suggest that you only pick these, you know, I mean, they're not even paying you a lot of time, you know, so like you have to pick these things that help you get to where you want to go in your career and your life. Are you doing what you want to do, you know? And if you're not, then what's in it for you, you know? It doesn't seem like there's a lot. So that's how I choose internships. That's how I have always chosen jobs. You know, I have an idea of who I want to be and what I want to do and what I want to accomplish. And I'm going to go where they let me do that, or where they give me a chance to do that. I'm not going to go where there's a bigger name or even more money. You know, I've turned down money a lot because when I looked at myself and I saw who I wanted to be, I was a magazine writer. And so I went to places that would let me be a magazine writer.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a great point there, that, and it may not necessarily be a one-to-one correlation, but the idea that, you know, if you're attracted to internships, sometimes, you know, we automatically think the biggest names, the largest, most well-known organizations, but it's more likely that you'll play a little bit of a smaller role there versus, you know, you go to the small organization and all of a sudden, you know, you're one of 5 people, like you mentioned. That's probably going to come with more responsibility. So it's an interesting way to think about the trade-offs that you might see depending on which organizations you pursue. It's really good. Hillary, in your introduction, yeah, go ahead, Gina.
I just wanted to hop in with just like one quick anecdote. Not anecdote, that's a completely different word. As someone who's had a number of interns over my time in NBCU, my most successful interns were always the one who had a sense of what they were hoping to get out of the internship and didn't really leave it to me and said, what do you need? But kind of said, hey, I'd like to learn how to do data analysis or data visualization, or, you know, I didn't even want to really work in research. I wanted to learn marketing, you know, like I can help give you projects and stuff to help you get that experience, even if your internship isn't perfect. And I'm very happy, you know, if you're happy in what you're getting out of it, you're going to be more help to me. So I think to that point too, don't just assume that because an internship is listing certain responsibilities that's what it is. Ask those questions in your interview. Is there opportunity for me to, you know, talk to development or finance or something? Because that's where my true passions lie. I think any internship is good experience, and you just got to ask for it and advocate for yourself.
It's a great point. And I think, you know, the other piece of that is even thinking about the internship as a place where you can do a lot of informational interviews along the way. I know it's a little harder right now if you're doing virtual internships, but still to be able to ask your supervisor, you know, I'd love to have a coffee chat, or I know today it's probably more of a Zoom chat, but with somebody in this area to learn a little bit more about that. That's the kind of small but very powerful self-advocacy steps you can take in internships. Really, really good advice. Hillary, in your introduction, you talked about that junior year, the internship process. I'm wondering if you can go into a little bit more detail of what that was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. To be completely honest, my looking into internships was just to make sure I had something going on over the summer. I had really limited sort of office experience. I feel like the opportunity that I had in my internship was great to learn like email etiquette and how to like have good professional conversations and be in meetings and things like that. But, you know, it was a good experience just to see what's out there professionally. But I would say in terms of, and going back to sort of what I said earlier, I wish I had maybe done some more diverse internships while I was at school. But experiential learning is something that I find to be so important and definitely left a huge impact on my college experience. Doing service projects with CCSJ, doing service immersion trips, study abroad, like those were the things that I spoke about during interviews and added dynamic to my experience. And helped me realize that social work was really where I was going. So a couple years after graduating Loyola, I went to Loyola Chicago and got my master's in social work. But if it weren't for these opportunities to really interact with other people outside of the classroom experience and see the world on a larger scale, I don't know, that's what I really refer back to a lot when it comes to my where I am now in my profession, is those seeds that were planted while I was in college because I said yes to these different opportunities. And I remember looking at jobs senior year of college and being like, all these places are asking for like 3 years of experience or, in whatever field. And I'm like, well, like, where do I start with that? And so that's where these experiences, like, you still go for it, still apply if it's something that you want, because you maybe had some other experiences where interest was piqued. You're curious, you're eager, you want to learn. I mean, employers love that. They like when you know the areas that you could grow in and learn in, that makes their life even easier too, because they know where to direct you. So I'm all about experience outside of the classroom because it just helps you learn about yourself so much.
Yeah, it's I can hear the passion in the way you answered that question too. That really comes from the heart, and it's neat. You talked about planting seeds and how I think it's a great way to illustrate that internships and experiential learning really they're co-curricular things. They complement your academic learning, where sometimes the seed can get planted in a class and then you cultivate it out in an internship. But I think in some cases too, you have students who get really powerful internships and then realize, I want to dive deeper into something related to this. And maybe the course selection then comes from that. So that's where that journey really weaves together and can be powerful if you're intentional about it. I want to get wrapped up with our Q&A here with a closing question to everybody. And at this point, if any of our audience wants to ask a question, either generally for our panelists, for anybody to answer, or if you've got a specific question you want to put out there to one of our panelists, go ahead and start putting them into the chat now, and I'll look for those. So my closing question to everybody here is really thinking ahead. I'd love to hear from your perspective any combination of what's getting you excited these days. What do you see coming next for you in your career that you're excited about? But where are things heading for you, and where's kind of your energy as you move forward with your career going forward? And I'll let you, I'd love for each person to give us a little bit of a closing thought on that. So whoever wants to jump in first.
I can go ahead. So
thanks, Valentina.
Yeah, no problem. So for me, obviously the pandemic has brought a lot of uncertainty. I think it's appended every single industry. And while that's scary, there's so much potential and opportunity for companies, for nonprofits, for individuals, for communities to take this as a chance to change, to rethink what would it be like to live in a world where, we did things a little bit differently. And so for me, what I'm most excited about is just seeing sort of what the next, 9 months, 12 months, couple of years from now will bring in terms of how we do things differently. I think predominantly maybe from like a social impact perspective, I think, a lot of the times we view the social impact or social justice space as just kind of like an add-on or like a bonus. So to see companies thinking critically about like the underpinnings of, inclusion and, inequity are systemic, I think, and actually being, pushed to do something about it, I think is really exciting. In terms of where I see my career, I'm going to impart the best advice I still have to this day that I got from Professor Hulk. If anybody's ever taken one of her poli-sci classes, I think I was interviewing her for like a business writing class. And she told me that your career is like a jungle gym, right? And so like it took some time for that to sink in, because I was like, no, but like, your career is like a ladder, right? Like you move up, if you back down, then you must be doing something wrong. And it's only through time and experience that you realize that there's like no right or wrong step, right? So, as far as where I see myself, like much like Greg mentioned, like I know the kind of person I want to be. I know the skills I want to get. And so I'm less so focused on like, I want to be at XYZ company doing like ADC role. I want to always just feel like I'm in a place where I'm continuously learning and growing. And that could mean something as simple as learning new skills, or it can mean having the ability to influence, company-wide initiatives. But it's always this like perpetual quest of like challenging yourself. And I would just encourage you all to really adopt that mindset, because if you do, no matter where you end up, no matter what you do, you'll never be in the wrong place.
Great point, Valentina. Thank you. I'm really struck by the opportunity I think we all have here, in that, we had a normal pre-pandemic, right? And then all of a sudden we were forced into what I've heard referred to as this new normal. But I think the instinct to say, well, I just can't wait till things get back to normal, is the wrong approach. It's really about now how do we create a better normal and really do things differently in a way that creates more justice, that creates more inclusion, that creates more efficiency, that creates more, whatever it is, making the world a better place than it was prior to the crisis we found ourselves in. So that's great inspiration. Who's next? Who wants to jump in?
I can hop in for the next, to answer. If you asked me when I graduated from Loyola if I would be doing this job right now, I'd be like, well, I wouldn't put it past me, but like I had no idea I would end up here. And so I do struggle to make plans sometimes, because I'm like, some kind of wrench will be thrown in. But in social work, you can get certain licensures. I'm working towards my clinical licensure right now, where I can, move up a little bit in the ranks and be able to provide some more, services to more private insurances and a little bit more flexibility. But I had an internship during my master's program at a university in right outside of Chicago that has a majority of their student population identify as Latino. And so that was an amazing experience to support college students in their mental health journeys. And ideally where I want to be back, offering my services. I love supporting people in their mental health in any way I can. So who knows how that will sort of stretch and form. And I appreciate Valentina's comment about how, this is a jungle gym and what you learned, because that's so true. There's so many twists and turns. I just want to keep learning and really adapting to, all the newness that's coming our way. Therapy has changed exponentially because of this. And I know my organization was many years from ever offering, so much virtual service. But we're here now, we're doing our best. And I look forward to just, being a student of life going forward.
Awesome. Great advice. That lifelong learner mentality. And yeah, looking at your field, how much therapy has changed, but also how much the demand has skyrocketed as you think about all the incredible challenges that people around the world are going through. It's such a needed profession for any of you out there thinking about your own path. The need is just so great. So thank you for doing that work, Hillary. Let's close out with a couple comments from Greg and Gina, and then I'm going to get to a couple questions from our audience.
I'm excited to be scared again, I guess, and new, and not, and kind of in a new industry and a new career, and just fresh again, not knowing where to find anything, not knowing actually what I'm supposed to do. And, aside of that, who was I? If you ask me, I think through my 20s and, at first and at Loyola, who was I? I was a member of the soccer team. I was a soccer player. That's all I was. Everything else was after that, and then once I got into my professional career, it was, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist. Like, that's who I am. And like, realistically, both those that I'm seeing now are very small parts of who I was, who I am, and I think now that I'm in my 30s, I see my career a little differently. It's a part of, it's what I do. It's a big thing of what I do, but I'm just not, I don't belong to Levi's. I don't belong to my career or even all my dreams, I'm more than that. And that's a different feeling than I've ever had before. And some people always know that. Some people never get to know that, and or never truly believe it. And so, I'm kind of excited to kind of explore myself now,
Great,
I got
Greg.
to be scared
I
again.
know that phrase, excited to be scared again, it's got to go on a wall somewhere. I wrote it down. Something's going to happen with that. I really love how you explain that. It's a really, really neat way to look at today's environment. Gina, we'll close with you.
Yeah, I relate super deeply to what Greg just said, so I don't want to repeat it. But just recognizing that your career is a piece of who you are. It's not who you are, and don't put all of your value into what you do. That's something that I definitely struggled with. That said, I love my job. I am lucky enough to work for brands that I've been a fan of for a really long time, and being able to impact them, in all the ways that they'll let me has been really cool. And, with the proliferation of all the different SVOD services, at NBC Universal, we have Peacock now, which I promise it's not a paid plug. It's just a new opportunity to continue to learn in my current role, to understand the SVOD world, see how I can sort of put my fingerprints on that. So definitely gets me out of bed in the morning.
Awesome. Yeah, it's such a great reminder too that our career isn't us, but one of the ways that I like to express it is that the most fulfilling careers are the ones where they are expressions of who we are in terms of our values and our interests and our talents. So that's the goal, and that can change in what it looks like over time, but it expresses you. It doesn't define you.
100%.
That makes sense. So thank you all. This has been really wonderful. I do have a couple of questions that have come in from our audience. I want to start off with a two-part question. This is actually specific to Hillary. And it's a question about from Riley. She's asking, there's an interest in social work. So knowing that Loyola doesn't have that as a major, and did you find that to be a hindrance or difficulty, not having the major in social work while trying to get your master's? And then the two-part question there is, how about the global studies major? What was that like, and how did it relate to your social work goals?
Great question. So not having a major in social work was absolutely fine. I feel like when getting my master's, I feel like the master's programs that are around do not require previous experience in social work, which is really great. And so they really, focus in. I mean, when you get started, you're focusing on the history of social work, kind of like the core of social work. So previous experience, I wasn't hindered. Even friends who were right out of college, from previous majors who came into a master's in social work did great. So you're good there. I definitely related global studies to social work through my focus in working with individuals who either were, immigrants, refugees, or have family members who have immigrated to the United States. Global studies was a way to understand country of origin, understand dynamics, political dynamics, even systems. Social work's very focused on systems. So super relevant to the experience. Social work is, I mean, I don't know if it's because I went to another Loyola, but it just had a very much like, you know, a well-rounded global citizen kind of frame to the curriculum. So all are welcome.
Great, Valentina, thank you. And thanks, Riley, for the question. I want to go to a question next from Samantha. And this is, I think, an example from one of our admitted students. So a potential future first-year student at Loyola. Yeah, we got the claps going here. What advice, this is kind of a broad question, what advice would you have if you were in their shoes right now about to enter college? Go, what do you have for Samantha?
Have fun, dude. It's gonna have fun. Like I don't know. I just you know, I just saw a couple Loyola classmates last, you know, this weekend. You know, I've some of the closest friends I have, you know, are from Loyola. They're from college. You know, they're my teammates and my roommates there. All this career stuff is like on some level, it's gonna get figured out. You're gonna be fine. You know, there are people, unfortunately, who go to Loyola right now who are not in the Zoom chat who are gonna be fine. You know, but the most successful, the richest people in the whole world would give everything they have to be where you are right now, just to go back to it. And like, never lose sight of that. This is no doubt about it, like the best time of your life. These next 4 years or 5 or 6 years will be the best. And like, as we're seeing the pandemic, you don't get that time back. You know, you're gonna be you're gonna be old one day if you're lucky enough. You know, it's gonna be gone, and it's gonna be gone really quickly. And so it's while you're in college, like, you know, be responsible. Like I said, you owe it to yourself to you know, pursue your plan, you know, with tenacity. But like, a big part of your plan should be like having fun in these 4 years, and you owe it to yourself to get the most out of that too. These are the best years you're gonna have. I wish I were in your shoes.
I actually would love to hop in here too. I think freshman year, I think just like remember that like you're there to learn, you know, don't prioritize like making friends, which is also the best part. And like I met my best friends my first semester freshman year, honestly, like the first week. So, and like we are so close now. We were all in each other's weddings, like, but don't forget that you're there to learn. And likewise, like you're not there to just learn things from your major. Take advantage of, we have a very comprehensive core. You're going to learn a little smattering of everything. If something entices you and you enjoy it, use your electives. That's how I wound up 1 credit shy of a music minor. Like, you're there for you. You're there to figure out who you are. And so, you know, definitely take advantage of that.
Awesome. Yeah, it reminds me of a phrase that our president, Father Linane, uses, where he talks about making sure that while you're here, you squeeze the sponge, right? You want to squeeze every last drop out of the sponge. And that's everything from your academics to your social experience to being in Baltimore. There's so much to that. It's a lot of fun. And I would say these should be some of the best years of your life. And then they position you, when you squeeze that sponge, for incredible many more best years beyond. But what a great platform for the rest of your life those 4 years can be. Got a question from Corinne, and then I'll do one more, and then we will wrap up and get into our career exploration exercise. So Corinne is asking for Gina, how hard was it to get a job in entertainment? So there's an interest here in media and management. What's your advice on getting into that industry, which tends to be pretty competitive?
Yeah, I think it's pretty competitive if you want to go sort of the more buzzy departments like development and production or even marketing. But I think recognize that it's a very small industry once you get in. And I think, you know, research, for not to plug my own job, but like we're always looking for people who are vaguely interested in research. We actually have difficulty filling roles. So I think being open to maybe not starting out in the department that you might see yourself in, just to get your foot in the door. And, you know, again, networking, can't say it enough. Like, if you want to, you know, you want to work at a specific company, reach out to people on LinkedIn. They might not ignore you, but they might humor you. And then, you know, if you are able to get your foot in the door in some of those less, I don't want to say desirable, but like less, you know, exciting departments, network when you're in there, and try and maneuver your way to the place where you want to be.
Great. Yeah, that network, especially with you know, these big name companies,
Yeah.
it's, you have to do something beyond the traditional application to get noticed.
And
I think that's
anyone
great.
on this call can reach out to me. I'm very happy to I'm on Loyola Connect, so you guys can find me there.
Thank you. Really appreciate the plug. All right, last question. We'll go to Valentina. This is around being a poli-sci major and then being marketable to be hired. What would you say? What's your advice on getting that job after college as a poli-sci major? What do you think made you attractive to employers as you left school?
Great question. So when I graduated from Loyola, I ended up working at a top 10 international corporate law firm because I thought I wanted to go to law school. Fast forward, I am not at law school and I'm not a lawyer, but it was an amazing experience. And I got to work with incredibly talented, driven individuals. And I think the reason why I was able to end up where I was because of my poli-sci background. So I would say, the skills that people are looking for a lot of entry-level jobs, regardless of the industry, are always just like your ability to communicate effectively, your ability to work hard and be interested and hustle and learn. And all those things come from, as previously has been said during this session, just doing stuff that you love. And so for me, it wasn't hard to articulate the value of a poli-sci degree because most of the people that I was actually working with were poli-sci majors, anthro majors. So all that to say that, yeah, I wouldn't be super concerned about, you know, marketability if you're not like a doctor or whatnot. I would also definitely take advantage of being in Baltimore and being close to DC. Like, I interned on Capitol Hill my senior year. There's just so many opportunities. So if I could just give any sort of imparting advice, it would be really take advantage of every single opportunity, even the ones that you might not know exist, by reaching out to folks.
Awesome closing advice for our panel, Valentina. Thank you. Greg, Gina, Hillary, this has been such a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I've come away inspired too by all of your stories. Gina, I thank you also for mentioning Loyola Connect, which for anybody who's on the call who does not know about it, that is our platform for the university where current students and alumni can connect with each other around all sorts of career and professional development conversations. Catherine just put the URL into the chat. It's loyola.edu/connect. Members of our panel are there and available to connect with you for brief conversations about your career path and various ways they can help you, along with about 2,300 other Loyola alumni from all industries, all across the country, and even in some cases around the globe. So a really wonderful community to connect with if you haven't joined already. It just takes a couple minutes to get started there. And I would invite our panelists too, if you want to put in anything like your own LinkedIn URL into the chat, you're welcome to do that for our students to be able to connect with you at some point down the road. Again, I want to thank you all so much for joining us. Thank our students for the great questions. So thank you again.